Hello Facebook Livers, this is Steve Barrett, Editorial Director of PRWeek. We're shooting our last podcast of the year, so a big finale to a great year that's gone really quickly, but lots to talk about today. We'll be doing our roundups and a bit of a look forward to next year as well, but we'll also have a great guest, Manny Ruiz, who's the founder of NostalgiaCon. How you doing, Manny?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here.
Well, we're excited to have you here. Regular guest on PRWeek and a good friend of the brand. And we're excited to find out about your latest venture. The
most exciting thing I've ever been a part of.
And you've been a part of a lot of exciting things.
Yeah.
So yeah, looking forward to that. Frank Washkuch here. How you doing, Frank?
Hello. Thank you for having me on.
Always a pleasure, Frank.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, I mean
happy to be with you this week.
I'm delighted.
Last one of the year, Frank.
It's been hard to believe.
It is.
Really
it's
hard
gone
to
pretty
believe.
quickly, actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you've got any comments or you want to sort of give us your predictions for the year or your looks forward to next year, the things that were big highlights for you, then slot them into the comments below. But apart from that, we're going to get going very shortly. Hello and welcome to the PRWeek, PRWeek's regular weekly roundup of everything that matters in the worlds of PR and communications. My name's Steve Barrett. I'm the Editorial Director of PRWeek. Going to guide you gently through the next 25, maybe 30 minutes. It's our last show of the year, listeners. Very sad, but also one of celebration. A great year, our 20th anniversary. It's gone so quickly, it's unbelievable. It doesn't seem that long since we were launching our 20th anniversary at the Hall of Fame dinner in 2017, and we've already shot through it. But we're going to reflect on that over the next 25 minutes and maybe have a little look forward as well as talk to our amazing guest, a good friend of the brand and a regular visitor to PRWeek. It's Manny Ruiz, who's now the founder of NostalgiaCon. How you doing, Manny?
I'm delighted to be here, and congratulations on your 20th anniversary. Very apropos for what I'm about to talk to you about.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll find out more about that because you're looking back a little bit further than 20 years, but to a great decade. But yeah, good to have you with us, and we'll chat through some of the other things that you're doing as well. And then we've got Frank Washkuch here. How you doing, Frank?
I'm really well. Thank you for inviting me on.
It's always a pleasure. The show wouldn't be the same without you. As we sort of hurtle into the end of the year, that beard has been a constant topic of conversation on the podcast.
How's it been?
How's it ending the year? How's it ending the year? It's
well,
looking good.
It's staying for now.
For the winter,
time being, yeah.
Bedding in for the winter.
Yeah.
Looking good, my friend.
Thank you.
Very good. So we're going to talk to Frank about the highlights of the year, some of the big storylines that we've been following, and maybe a quick look into 2019. Can't believe we're already talking about that. But Manny, let's start with you. I think we first sort of came into contact my first year over here, actually, in 2010, when I came down to Hispanicize down in Dallas, it was then.
That's right.
Which is sort of, the progress of that event's incredible. It's become like the South by Southwest for the Hispanic community, but back then it was just a few hundred people in Dallas.
Yeah, only less than 300.
Yeah, it was a great event. It was a lot of fun. In fact, I kind of miss those old days a little bit, but you can't really argue with the growth of that.
I always miss the old days.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah, well, NostalgiaCon, you know. But you've sort of moved on from Hispanicize. You've been involved with the Mixed Reality Marketing Summit, which was earlier this year, a really interesting event in New York at the PlayStation Theatre, and I think you're going to do more of that. So explain where you're at now. You're not so involved in Hispanicize, you're doing the mixed reality thing, and you're launching NostalgiaCon, which is a totally new venture, very exciting, launched last week. So just tell us what you're up to.
Well, you know, it's been a long time making. You know, funny enough, what you're calling what we call NostalgiaCon was probably birthed 35 years ago when I began penning my 1980s diary. I actually have a real diary. People have made jokes about it. Kavanaugh has a calendar. I actually have a diary. Not that incriminating, to be honest.
Did you drink beer like Kavanaugh?
I did not. I was a pretty much of a goody two shoes, if you will.
Really?
Yeah. But my diary is rife with plenty of anecdotes about movies that I've gone to see, friends that I had a fight or an argument with, and then girlfriends that I was trying to make, but I would never have girlfriends. I mean, I had very embarrassing situations. I was always, in my diary, I looked like the kid that nobody would pay attention to. And so it's really interesting that 35 years later, it really factors into NostalgiaCon, which launched last week in New York City, a city that itself is iconic to my life because my grandfather first came to the United States in New York City in 1914, as a matter of fact. And he married my grandmother in 1941 in New York City as well. And I met my future wife, Angela, here as well. So I was very happy. And we have our main office is actually in New York City as well. So that's part of what that's about. But NostalgiaCon is the first global platform ever created to celebrate decades. And we do it one decade at a time. And of course, as we announced, NostalgiaCon will be doing the first ever massive fan gathering of the 1980s. I was a Adam and the Ants fan. I had Stand and Deliver and Goody Two Shoes in my
Should we sing it,
mixtape.
Frank?
Stand and Deliver! Yeah.
Goody Two.
I was more of a Stand and Deliver than Goody Two Shoes.
I was more Ant Music.
Yeah.
And the first Adam and the Ants album,
Well,
which was actually in the 70s.
Def Leppard is the band that thrust me into heavy metal. I was a Latino with deep heavy metal
Did
passion.
you have long hair in the 80s?
I did. I had more hair than now. And Iron Maiden was my first concert ever.
Shoulder length, head banging.
I was very guarded. All my friends didn't wear deodorant because they were typical heavy metal guys back then. But I was mindful of I was a little pregnant. And what I mean by that is I loved the music. I'd wear the shirts. I'd wear some of the pants and stuff. But I didn't want to get to the point where girls would not look at me because I had a complex. Nobody was going to pay attention to me if I looked as run down as my friends did. So I actually, because of that, I had an appreciation for new wave and for pop that they didn't. They were like hardcore metal all the way, and I love metal, but I didn't let it completely take over me. So
yeah, so you've chosen the 80s because it is an iconic decade. Tell us what's going to happen. You're going to be having an event in July, I think, over July 4th weekend.
So we're doing the first ever NostalgiaCon, because obviously we'll be doing the 80s and 90s as of 2020, but the first one will be, people have asked me, what is that, like? And it will be what you would get if you combine Comic-Con with Coachella. So this is an epic reunion in every sense of the word. So we'll have reunions of TV shows, films, music groups. You'll have a lot of music at this event. Every genre will be represented. And I think that the event is going to have, we project at least 30 to 40,000 attendees. Wow. Remember, this is going to be an event that's going to have a lot of celebrity firepower.
Where's it going to be?
It's going to be in the Anaheim Convention Center. The largest convention center outside of Las Vegas. And it gives us room to grow and to become bigger and bigger every year. And it's terrific. It's 4 blocks from Disneyland. So if you're planning a vacation, 4th of July, you want to have a great time, you'll have Disneyland within your reach. But you also have NostalgiaCon within your reach, and I think we're going to play.
And I've been told this. I don't know this myself, but I've been told that millennials are really into nostalgia.
Everybody's into nostalgia. The moment you sit back.
But I heard millennials especially.
But
Frank, you are a millennial. So what are you into nostalgia?
He just looks like a millennial.
No.
We clarified this.
No. We're not. We had this.
I just missed the cut. But
does that mean you're not into nostalgia?
I like to think I'm an advocate for millennials.
Very cool. Yeah.
Do you remember the 80s, Frank?
Vaguely. Yeah, vaguely. I remember some things.
Do you have
the 80s are trending like crazy. I don't know if you guys saw this, but on Halloween, both Good Morning America and the Today Show did a complete 80s takeover of their show. It's funny because one of my partners called me and said, "Manny, you won't believe this," and the entire broadcast of both shows were decked out in the 80s, and they're like, we love the 80s.
So it was like big hair, cut off t-shirts, sweaters.
I remember Back to the Future, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, you'll probably see a lot of these icons and legends, I guarantee you, at NostalgiaCon. To your point about millennials, the event is not being created to be what I would call an Oldchella event. It's being created so that it caters to all the generations that love the 80s.
So not just the people who were in that peak in the 80s.
Look, we're going to be easy picking. So it's no secret that if you're a Gen Xer, you're going to adore NostalgiaCon. But I guarantee you that if you just love the 80s and everything that it's meant for pop culture today, you're going to absolutely love it, because we're actually going hardcore into having the millennial icons of today that love the 80s as part of this program.
But I think you can really hear the influence of that decade in the music that's popular today.
Oh, absolutely.
And things like that.
So
hip hop was really, I mean, it was conceived in the 70s.
Debbie Harry. Let's talk about Debbie Harry. My favourite person, the icon of my life. She was obviously in the 70s, but she sort of made that transition from new wave to hip hop, didn't she? With,
absolutely.
What tune was it?
I thought it was somebody with related to Grandmaster Flash.
Yeah, definitely Grandmaster Flash.
So she was very inclusive.
You see, that's the other thing about the 80s. If you were around then, you don't have much memory left. You know what I mean? So
no, I got
this is going to bring it back. You've got your diary.
I got my diary.
Tell us about your diary.
Well, my diary, people joke about it because, you know, who keeps a diary? But I was always sentimental and nostalgic because I was raised by older people. My grandparents raised me. And I think I bought it because I thought I would not have them forever, and I just wanted to have a way of keeping them, right? So my diary has a lot of references to my grandparents, my best friends, some of which, you know, we used to call ourselves a Rat Pack, my best friend, a group of best friends.
And did you grow up in New York, or was it down?
No, I grew up in Miami.
Miami,
so
right, yeah.
It's an 80s Miami diary, if you will. But
Miami Vice, Don Johnson.
I know the day that I saw
God.
Back to the Future, The Karate Kid.
Will there be a Rubik's Cube competition?
We are going to try to break some records, and I believe that we will have the world's largest Rubik's Cube on stage.
Yes, sir.
And this is no joke. I am trying to give away a DeLorean. So
where do you get a DeLorean to give it away?
There's actually the DeLorean Motor Company exists.
Really?
Yeah. In fact, I'm launching a podcast, and we will be interviewing one of the owners of the DeLorean Motor Company, because everybody loves Back to the Future.
Sure.
And they love their DeLoreans.
So we've got the event. What else is around NostalgiaCon? And you're going to have events for other decades. What are the other elements to the brand, if you like? Will there be websites? Will there be a social network? You said there's a podcast. Talk us through some of the other elements.
So some of the social elements, we will have a weekly podcast called That's Nostalgia. We have a social media presence on NostalgiaCon80s.com. And NostalgiaCon 80s will be across Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. So if you want to, we're going to own Throwback Thursdays, by the way. So I don't know if you guys know this, but we actually launched on Throwback Thursday, December 13th at 8:08 a.m. And we feel that that's a terrific platform for us, because Throwback Thursdays,
Throwback
Thursday,
band called 808 States.
Was there?
Set Adrift on Memory
Wow.
Bliss. I don't know if that was 80s.
The numbers that I remember from the 80s was 8675309, you know? But yeah, you know, Throwback Thursdays will be the iconic day when we put new content. And just the fact that Throwback Thursday exists tells you that people love their nostalgia.
Yeah, man, I love the idea. It's fantastic. So
we'll have, so if you want to imagine what NostalgiaCon would look like, imagine going to a place that has multiple genres of music, but has pavilions for music, for film, for automotive, for collectors, breakdance competitions, massive cosplay, because, you know, cosplay is huge at all the cons. And we will have all the best things that you've ever seen at any Comic-Con and any Coachella combined with the 80s. And that's what we are.
It sounds great.
For the 90s.
Sounds great. If people want to find out more, Manny, where should they go? What's the web address?
They should go to NostalgiaCon80s.com.
80s with 80s.
80, yeah, with 80 and the S at the end. And then my personal one, which I will use because I majored in history, another weird fact. And not only have an 80s diary, majored in history, but I myself will have one called That's Nostalgia. And I'm pretty confident that, you know, we will own that concept.
Will Hall & Oates be involved?
Hall & Oates has been in discussion, but there are a number of bands that we're trying right now to announce. Come January, we will officially do our first pre-sale.
Sounds good.
And then the regular sales. And the pre-sales is going to be more exclusive, how we begin those first tickets to be sold, but there'll be a lot of accessibility. I will tell you that we expect a very significant announcement around the event 2 weeks before, because we're going to do an epic road trip, but more about that later.
Okay, a Back to the Future style road trip?
Can't tell you all the details about it,
okay.
but just know that we're taking this, everything I learned in PR and journalism and social media is converging in what nostalgia.
I love this. I think you should sign up Gideon Fiddlesite, our managing editor, as a consultant, because he's
the troublemaker. Yeah,
he is a king of the '80s, Hall and Oates, you know, all this good stuff. Billy Joel, you know, he's your man. So, all right, we're looking forward.
And we'll have some British representation, so don't worry about that.
We invented most of the good stuff in the '80s.
Absolutely,
French,
especially
David
the
Bowie,
metal and
come
new
on.
wave.
Well, Depeche Mode.
A lot of new wave.
Depeche Mode.
So if you love new wave,
of course,
you'll feel right at home at nostalgia.
Okay, on the Bunny Mark. This is my era. This is my era. Just touching on the other things you're doing, Mixed Reality Marketing Summit. You had the first one at PlayStation Theatre in New York. First of all, what's mixed reality? We've heard of AR and VR. What's mixed reality?
So, you know, VR is content that's pre-made and you can experience it with a device on your eyes. Mixed reality is content that you can interact with. You know, some of it has haptic senses to it, so you can feel it. You can almost feel part of it as well, not just see it. And it gives you an opportunity to see content in a very high clarity, you know, almost like it's more than 4D. You got everything short of transporting content into something is what mixed reality has become, and you can't smell it yet, but there's a lot of experimentation going on so that in the future, which is right now, I would say in the next 6 months of the year, you're gonna see continuous innovations that make you appreciate everything from sports highlights to how you potentially meet somebody for a relationship, to your doctors, vacations. You're going to be able to have vacations come to you, and you're going to be able to be transported there in a way that is so interactive that it's mind-blowing.
So I've heard about these mirrors that you use to do training, keep fit. Instead of
absolutely.
a Peloton, would you call that mixed reality, or is that a different
No,
tool,
because mixed reality really is
going to be more immersive.
You know, the best thing that's happening in mixed reality is coming from a company called Magic Leap out of Florida, and the other company that's really innovating a lot too is Microsoft with the HoloLens. I will tell you that the devices used to be bulky when we talked about virtual reality.
That's the problem, isn't it? There's these big, chunky, clunky things
It's
you have to put on your face.
becoming more and more to the point where you're going to put little glasses on and you're going to experience stuff you can't imagine. And the way that the audio is going to be interacting with your mind and your brain, it's crazy futuristic stuff, but it's now. And this is really an exciting moment for marketers, anybody who's a brand or an agency. If you want to future-proof your career, start getting into this, because we are right now in mixed reality marketing what social media was in 2008. Yeah. So if you know what happened with social media, how much money you made,
did pretty well, didn't it?
You know,
so
I think it's a
when's
great
the
time.
next summit? You're doing another one, aren't you? Is that
We'll probably be doing 3. Right now, we're planning to do one in Miami, and most likely another one in New York, or it's going to be another. That's where it's 2 to 3 for next year. But we got a great reception. Best Western, CMO was there and talked about some of their early ventures in augmented and mixed reality and virtual reality. We had the director of Lawnmower Man, great movie, by the way, if you want to get a taste for how the future is evolving in content. This is all about the future of content.
Yeah.
But the future of content is becoming more and more the present.
Sure.
And that's what I think is so exciting about mixed reality marketing.
Yeah, we sent a reporter, Sean Zanecki, up there, and he had a great time, enjoyed it a lot. Just let's check in on Hispanicize. So you're still slightly involved? You still have a stake in that? What's the state of play with
So I'm very proud of our trajectory in Hispanicize. I led it for 9 years for the event part especially. That's really what I find to be very helpful to everything I'm doing with NostalgiaCon, right? But on steroids, NostalgiaCon. But Hispanicize is celebrating its 10th anniversary, ironically so, next year, and it's moved from Miami to LA for Hispanic Heritage Month, as a matter of fact. And so I'm still involved, but very, very
It's run by Joe Hoover now, yeah?
Yeah, and the founders, really. The founders are running the company. They've done a great job. We fortunately were able to transition it. You know, what was really challenging for me is that I had the idea for NostalgiaCon for 6 years. So the past year before I left Hispanicize, I was already transitioning the company and trying to do this fully. And it's been very difficult, but Hispanicize is in a really great spot because it's the 10th anniversary. And I think there's never been a greater need among the Latino community to be able to show the dignity, the creativity, and the impact that our community represents for the country. So for such a time as this, I think Hispanicize is more important than ever as the event part of it. Anyway.
So the main Hispanicize is moving to LA for the 10th anniversary?
10th anniversary. It looks like we will probably be doing a CMO summit in April in Miami because Miami is very important to the marketing industry. But the main event, the big event, is going to be going to the largest city in the country with Latinos, which is LA.
And that, when will that be?
I think it's projected for October.
So it's a bit later in the year.
Yeah. They wanted to time it to Hispanic Heritage Month. So look, I think what I'm doing now represents Latinos in general, even though it's not a Hispanic company. I will continue to be helpful to Hispanicize, but Hispanicize is on its own. I think hopefully when you create something, you hope that it continues. And one of my other companies, Hispanic PR Wire, continues the PR Newswire. Mm-hmm. And I hope that would happen now that I'm no longer there, that the founders would be able to continue it with the investors.
And finally, just building on what you were saying there, I saw you last week at the Hispanic Leadership Summit reception. A great event they had up at the UN. 300 Hispanic leaders there, and a great reception down on the Lower East Side. The We Are All Human Foundation, Claudia Edelman involved in that, who was also involved in Hispanicize. What's your take on that? Because the Claudia's view is that Hispanic communities need to join together and act more as one, whereas it's always been like 17 or 18 different communities, Mexicans, Dominicans, Cubans, etc., etc. What's your take on that? Is that really realistic, and how do you think that's going to play out moving forward?
Well, I thought it was very appropriate that summit happened. It was more than symbolic. It was a very important message that it took place at the United Nations. Mm-hmm. And I've been advocating, and I had written about this when I was still with Hispanicize, that the Hispanic community needed to do their own version of a continental convention. I know, I'm sorry that you're British, but we needed to. I know.
Happy to be
We're
British.
Dear friends
happy to be over here.
But the continental convention.
I'm Basque originally, apparently.
Oh no!
I've just sent off.
Did you do a 23andMe?
I've sent off 23andMe and Ancestry. Like many others, I bought it over on Black Friday, so that's it's being processed as we speak. So I'll let you know if I do turn out to be Basque.
Well, I actually discovered I have an older brother, but that's another story.
Well, that's the only problem with that stuff. Is lots of things.
All sorts of trouble.
I know. So.
But I really feel that the Latino community in the United States needs to do their version of a continental convention, and to find a leader that will give, it's this belief. Many of the Latino leaders have always had this belief that we don't need a leader. We just need a soccer team, and everybody plays their position and does it well. And I'm saying, look, you can have a soccer team, but I'm more like, you need a quarterback. The quarterbacks are the ones that win Super Bowls, and I'm a big sports guy, so I know this. And we have not had somebody like Dr. Martin Luther King in the community. And it needs to be somebody that's not a leftist or a right guy. Somebody that's a middle of the ground person that can reach across the aisle. I believe that there are a few leaders that I could say would be able to do that. But the community needs to get real about it, and I thought that what Claudia did by organizing at the United Nations, there's something to build on. And I would say, hey, next year, do this call for selecting a leader, and then the community doesn't need to create another nonprofit. Don't compete for nonprofits.
So you haven't really answered my question, Manny. Can all the communities?
Yes, but it has to be done with creativity and entrepreneurship. And it needs to be somebody that the community gets behind because they are intentional about organizing that way.
What about
We've never thought that way.
Julian Castro?
I think he would be amazing.
He's being tipped as a potential runner for the Democratic leadership. Former mayor of San Antonio, very impressive guy. I saw him at Chicago Ideas Week just after the PR Week conference. But should he do that as a presidential run, or do you think he could make a bigger impact as a community leader?
It's very scary that you're saying this, because I actually told him that in person at the Leadership Summit. I told him, I know you're going to run for president, but I think you would be more valuable and more impactful and have a bigger legacy in history if you took this serious. So I can't wait to share this recording with him, because he's going to think it's weird that you just said that without me telling you anything, right? You and I did not have the conversation before. But I actually told him word for word, Julian, you are the one person that I think could actually reach across the aisle and really you have the legislative background, combining it with reaching out to all the communities and intelligently, I think you can be that leader that makes history forever. And I get behind that. I think that all the Hispanic leaders are hungry for somebody to just be creative and entrepreneurial about this and just get it done. And this is not to build an anti-Trump thing. Let me be very clear. I'm actually known to not be a Republican or a Democrat. I'm telling you, this is not about politics. This is about helping represent the dignity of the humanity of Latinos. And when you speak that way and not in political terms, then you get something done.
Yeah, otherwise it just gets to be, as we saw with the famous discussion, shall we say, in the Oval Office last week. Great to chat, Manny. Always great to chat to you, and wish you good luck with NostalgiaCon. I'm looking forward to celebrating one of my favourite decades.
Oh, we're going to do it
big time. Yeah. Frank, let's talk about the biggest content of the year. What were the things that really popped this year in the 20th anniversary year of PR Week US?
Well, you might remember going back a few months, our story about Denny's accident. I'm making quote marks in the air for our
that doesn't.
listeners.
It works on the
viewers.
Facebook Live, not so much on the.
Accidentally
audio.
sending out a super slam press release draft, which was all marked up and attempted to look like an accident, sending it out to newspapers and websites, and it actually really worked for them. They got a fair amount of publicity out of it, and it was kind of good, clean fun, and it worked for them. So that was we got them to walk us behind the scenes.
But that theme came back, didn't it, with the kitten walking over the keyboard, or not, in Burger King's case.
Very similar. And again, as we talked about, it tends to be food joints that are doing this.
No, we've seen
they are very innovative.
That was a definite trend, wasn't it? If you look at Wendy's, with the.
Well, then you had IHOP change their name.
Yeah, IHOP. A lot of these, by the way, were shortlisted in the PR Week Awards this year, which. The shortlist is incredible. It's one of the best I've ever seen in terms of the quality of brands and the quality of work and the quality of agencies and companies involved.
But clearly the food brands feel that they have creative license, I guess, to go on social. Yeah. So that was our most read story of the year. It wasn't really close. It was our most read story by far. Okay. And it might be one of those. I don't want to call it a stunt, but it might be one of those campaigns or activations that people think back on a few years from now and say, that was very innovative. So that was our top piece of content of the year. We've also had a poll of what was the best PR campaign of the past 20 years, of course, for our 20th anniversary in the U.S. And we had a photo finish at the time between Go Red for Women by the American Heart Association and Edelman, which of course is a really well-known campaign, and Always Like a Girl by Procter & Gamble and MSL Group. So we almost had to call in the lawyers to sort this one out at the last minute because it was very, very close.
Let's not call in lawyers. We don't know what happens then. What just happened to the president's lawyer? He's just about to do 3 years in Chokey, isn't he? Anyway,
but anyway, it went down to the wire. So number 3 was more of an investigative story about how Baylor's in-house communications people were kind of listening in to student groups on campus talking about the sexual assault crisis that happened there.
A many-layered story.
Yeah, it really was. And some good work there by our reporter, Sean Zernicki. It was picked up by a few national outlets, and so very well-read story. We also, as it's in the top 10 every year, the award winners, PR Week US Awards 2018, the winners, always a very big traffic night.
The Oscars of the PR industry, Frank?
So I'm told. And that was from March of this year. And that was followed by the 2018 edition of the Power List, which had a new person in the number one spot.
Donna Imperato atop the list. The first woman to be on top of the list, which I think is appropriate. And of course, Donna was involved in one of the biggest stories of the year, wasn't she?
Yes, and we're going to get to that in just a few.
Oh, okay. Sorry, don't want to interrupt
alert.
your flow.
Spoiler alert. Then also on the list was Polaroid splitting with their creative director, Lady Gaga, which was one of those stories that continued to get traffic.
That's an old story, isn't it?
It's
still getting traffic.
It is still kind of bobbing around on social media. So, Okay, the next one was how an NFL star's lifelong love of Airheads the candy, has led to a sweet playoff payoff. I came up with that headline. I'm very proud of it.
Can I just say, Frank?
Yes.
You came up with some good headlines this year.
One or two.
Yeah,
one
absolute
or two.
classics.
And that, of course, refers to the New Orleans Saints running back, Alvin Kamara, who's also one of my favorite NFL players. And we may see a sequel with that this year. They may make the Super Bowl. They may have the best team out there as of right now. So we'll see. Again, another one that kind of resurfaced back into our top content this year was Timeline of a Crisis, United Airlines. I'll just leave it there.
Old favourite. Yeah.
We'll just leave that one there.
Yeah, that's probably best.
Yeah.
Well, it was like a curse. They had one bad thing accidentally.
Yeah, well, Manny, you might remember we chose their CEO, Oscar Munoz, as our communicator of the year last year, actually. And,
right.
A month later, his company decides to ram one of their passengers' heads into the side of there. Anyway, as they were escorting him off the plane.
Right.
Yeah.
Escorting. We're using air quotes again. And the last one was a very meaty story, and what I think is probably the biggest actual PR news story of the year, which is the merger of Burson Marsteller and Conan Wolf, which happened in February. So,
absolutely historic deal, wasn't it?
Yes.
It's probably difficult to think of a bigger deal if you created the third biggest PR agency network in the world.
You would have to go back, I think, a long time to,
Weber
when the three firms came together.
When Omnicom bought, Ketchum and Fleischmann.
Right. You would have to go back a while, I think.
And in terms of dollars, I think it's the biggest.
So that's the top 10 right there. It's an interesting mix of stories. We have an investigative story in the top 3. We have some stories that are very heavy on reader interaction between voting. We have some awards. We have, and right at the top, we have an excellent consumer marketing campaign.
Yeah,
so
and
it's a good mix.
It's worth pointing out, one of our video stories actually hit was one of our top trafficked stories for the first time. It was what it's like to be black and working in PR, and by a former web editor, Perry Simpson. It's a great film, well worth checking out.
And
really,
it continues to get a lot of
and I would just say that
engagement.
even though it's not necessarily a headline, the fact that there is such a focus on diversity right now in the industry, almost like defending diversity because it's part of the American experience, is quite interesting as well. It seems like a subtext to a lot of discussions and debates that you're saying, because the White House has been pretty aggressively addressing diversity in its own way.
That's an interesting understatement.
Yeah.
Right? That's but yeah, I mean, look, it continues to be a focus, and there continues to be a lot of work to be done.
Absolutely.
Nobody can be complacent about that, and it's something we're cognizant of at PR Week, and something we continue to try and address.
From a media perspective, I think the other trend that I see a lot is a resurgence in journalism. I think the journalists, the community of journalists feels, more important than ever. I mean, there's more traffic to media. Certainly, the news cycle is faster and stronger and more well read and seen than ever before. So that's another trend impacting our community.
I was very gladdened to see Time put journalists on the cover who'd had a rough year, to say the least, in Jamal Khashoggi's case. And it was great to see. I was very pleased to see that. It was a nod to the people who are doing some really tough work and really important work in sometimes tragic circumstances. So yeah, for sure. Yeah. Frank, what was your highlight of the year, and what are you sort of looking forward to most next year?
Well, I have to say, I think a highlight was getting to work with the M&M team a bit more.
That's part of your new role,
which
50/50 role,
which is
medical marketing and media. One of our
a totally different experience, and it's also good to see how different types of agencies function, and what they focus on, and what how that world works.
Yeah, for sure. Manny, what was your highlight of the year, and what's your sort of prediction for next year?
I think not for anything, but I think mixed reality and augmented reality is going to take another step. HoloLens is coming out, the HoloLens 2 from Microsoft, and there's a lot of anticipation that's going to make it even stronger for brands to be able to start taking deeper and deeper dips in there. And of course, hey, NostalgiaCon, I think we're going to give birth to a bigger awareness about the power of nostalgia in marketing. It's been all around us for all these years. no one has ever harnessed it. That's what we're about to do. So
yeah, looking forward to that.
That's what I'm betting on.
Yeah, nice one. I mean, I've seen some interesting developments some of which we touched on. The burger sort of fast, quick service restaurant wars. What they're doing online and social is really interesting, and they're getting massive attention. There could be an argument about whether it's actually generating sales. I think it is, and I think they are converting some of it.
And I think it's interesting to say too that while a lot of the fast food chains are involved in this, the biggest one, McDonald's, has largely been absent from it.
No, I don't know about that. There was their 50th anniversary for the Big Mac, and they had the Mac coin, and they had a bunch of.
The Mac coin was good, but I think you don't see them as out there as.
The Szechuan riots was another one that's shortlisted in our awards. Where there was the soy sauce was. There were lines around the corner waiting for the McDonald's soy sauce. So I think they've still done work in a different way. They probably haven't participated in the same way as Wendy's.
McDonald's really was the first fast food brand that began to adopt social media heavily and to really be trend setting. So it's surprising to me that they have not been as aggressive. But
I think they have. I mean, they were our campaign of the year.
Oh, okay.
Don't forget this year. So and that was mining Twitter. That was the breakfast, the return of McDonald's all-day breakfast. So I think that's I think they.
Well, I just mean in a very stunty kind of way. Yeah.
They would probably say their stuff's more business critical and actually making a difference to sales. But so that's definitely something of note this year, and I'm sure that will continue and evolve. The whole Amazon process of choosing their second HQ, I thought was a fascinating process this year.
It's still ongoing, really.
And ongoing, and there's a lot of skepticism about it because most people thought, well, they had New York and they had Maryland. Pretty much, was it Maryland or Virginia? Pretty much set anyway, so there's discussion about that. But for me, it emphasised that whole big city trend where we're all moving towards the big cities. Michael Bloomberg has talked about this, how the world kind of revolves now around 50 big cities, and increasingly those are becoming the hubs that drives the world economy. And I think that was a sign of it. And when Amazon brings 8,000 more jobs into New York, that's another sort of. It's going to increase the concentration in Manhattan and in New York even more, and that's happening in cities throughout America and cities throughout the world. So I think that has a big impact. The Burson Conan Wolf story was just one of many agency consolidations, wasn't it? This year we've written about dozens, from a very small level right up to that big level, and that's an interesting trend, and we'll see more of that. We saw WPP launch its strategy last week, where they've made some consolidations with Wunderman and JWT and VIA and a load of initials that I can't remember.
I think another interesting trend that's going to impact the marketing world this year is, the Facebook congressional hearings.
Absolutely.
And the fallout from that, and how that's going to start getting Google and the other social media networks to up their game.
Facebook's got to change, and I think we'll see some leadership changes there in 2019. I'm going to put it out there now. I think they've got to change. They've got to learn the lessons that Microsoft learned back in the day when Bill Gates stepped back from the company, and they've reinvented themselves, and they've just been named. They've usurped Apple again as the world's most valuable brand. They had to go through that process. They were in the hole like Facebook was, and I think Facebook's got to learn from that. It's Mark Zuckerberg saying we just operate to a different worldview. I'm not sure that philosophy is going to work. So and I think Google and other big tech behemoths, Uber, have got to take note of that and learn the lessons that Microsoft and Apple learned in the 80s, actually, with the regulators and in DC. So definitely lots of storylines in there. I think there's going to be two big trends we've seen this year are esports and cannabis in terms of business sectors. I think they're going to be, we're going to hear a lot more about that next year. There's so much going on there. For me, a big highlight was our 20th anniversary. It was a great year to celebrate, and our PR Week Awards are going to celebrate the 20th awards. So that was a big highlight for me. There were a lot of executives. This new phrase we learnt, Frank, in 2018, retiring, not being fired or not, leaving, but they retire.
And then unretire.
And then turn up at other jobs. Yeah. But There's been a lot of senior communicators who've retired after being at the same company for a long time, and I think that's a sign of the evolution of the industry and the evolution of the CCO role. We've done a lot of stories this year also on the type of business that agencies are willing to take on. If you think about the stories about Qatar or about Saudi Arabia or Russia or certain states or even, you know, brands like Philip Morris, you know, with its talking about its going for a smoke-free future, you know. Do you still would you take on a client like that? I know that agencies like Weber and Edelman definitely wouldn't, but others do. And you know, they did a massive activation at Cannes this year, which you know, shows that they're spending a lot of money on their messages. Another trend that we've seen is communications leaders not necessarily reporting into the CEO. And we, in our bellwether survey that we did with Boston University for our 20th anniversary, we picked up on those reporting lines. Some CCOs just won't take a job unless it reports into the CEO, but more and more we're seeing that it doesn't. You know, it reports to marketing or the legal general counsel or the head of HR. So that's a big talking point in the industry.
Imagine that also another trend. It might not something probably you guys have already been covering extensively, but I know anecdotally there's an explosion of public affairs PR going on right now because policies are changing so fast that nobody can even keep up with it. So I would imagine this is a great heyday for public affairs agencies.
For those DC firms, for sure. They have to be active and playing in DC and being aware of the political environment because it plays into what they do. Right. And that actually brings me to another thing, is we've seen a lot of job losses. Seen a lot of big companies, you know, letting people go, like GM, like Bayer, Bloomberg, and others will follow. There's no doubt about that, and that has big implications for the communications function because they have to deal with the internal part of that, the external, and then dealing with Washington and DC. Increasingly, the president will weigh in on these factors, and you have to be prepared for that. So that's something we've seen. Frank, the story we did last week on WPP, I think that's a story we're going to watch closely.
It's absolutely something to watch because they've talked about how much of these job cuts and how much of the reorganization is going to be focused on the North American market. So yeah, it's something we're going to be keeping a close eye on.
Yeah, very much so. And then finally, Fearless Girl. We talked about it in a prior podcast, and she's turned up opposite the stock exchange. So she will not be facing off against the bull anymore, but she'll be next to the stock exchange. So I'm glad she's still around and is going to be an iconic figure still. And the State Street people.
It's kind of cool to be in front of the bull.
That's
the whole thing about Fearless.
I think so. We were talking about that the other week, and the argument is there wasn't much room there, and if you've been down there, there wasn't actually. And it became a very popular tourist attraction. So they're saying there's more room opposite the stock exchange. But I agree with you. I think it would be nice to keep it there. So so those are some of the highlights, some of the things we're looking forward to. It's going to be, I tell you, it's going to be a busy year. We know that this year.
Final thing, presidential candidates are going to come on board. That's a lot of political PR and activity.
Yeah, for sure.
About to explode onto the scene.
Well, there's 20 plus Dems looking to stand, from Beto O'Rourke right up to Joe Biden, up to Bernie Sanders potentially. Who knows what will happen with the Republicans? Will we see a challenger to the president for the leadership? You know, will someone like Nikki Haley make a run, or will she wait till later cycle? But yeah, it's the news cycle ain't changing. It's super fast. And listen, Frank, we appreciate your work on the news desk and across both brands and the teams. So thank you, and thanks for being a great guest and host on the podcast in 2018. Look forward to catching up with you in the new year. You'll be doing the first one because I'm on vacation in Europe, so you'll be kicking off the year. Manny, been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you,
always good to hang out.
I hope to see you at NostalgiaCon.
I wouldn't miss it for the world.
Celebrate your decade.
Yeah, I'll be putting on my 80s.
Actually, our tagline is relive your decade. So
I can send you a picture from the 80s where I have
I would really love to see that. I really would not love to see that.
Do you remember
Can you please?
Do you remember the flat top trend?
Yeah.
I have a picture.
Were you a punkhead? Were you a
It was a
punkhead?
flat suede head.
Okay.
It's more of a. I don't want to say skinhead.
So when did
because
you
it has
like?
negative connotations.
When did you do the ball thing?
Well, I didn't.
Well,
I
when did
didn't
it happen?
deliberately go for the ball.
I know, but
nature took its course.
I hear you, but how old are you? 35?
I was in my. How old am I? Yeah, 35. I wish. I was in my 30s when it started.
In your 30s?
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I'm going there too. I know.
Well, yeah.
I know.
But you're just getting into your 30s.
I'm 49. I'm 49.
So listen, I'm really looking forward to NostalgiaCon
Yes.
and mixed reality marketing and all that good stuff.
Should be fun.
Great.
Hopefully we'll partner again for that mixed reality marketing.
Yeah, for sure, and get that involved with the Brand Film Festival maybe. So
Yeah.
So that's all we got time for. Just a couple of customer service announcements. Talking of the Brand Film Festival, you got to get your entries in by the 14th of January, and that event will be on May the 2nd. That's the Paley Media Center in New York. At Global Awards, make sure you get your awards entries into that by the 17th of January. The ceremony's in London on May 21st. But that's all we've got time for this year on the PR year. Maybe we should have renamed it for 1 week. Thank you to Alex and Mickey behind the dials, doing a great job, and Sean as well when he's on his rotation. But we'll see you in 2019. Have a great holiday.
Happy New Year.